Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to the biggest difference between Britain and America from Lost in the Pond, and I mean it's a pretty broad title compared to usual reactions that I do from him, because usually it's on a specific topic, but I guess this is general differences, or yeah, just I guess it is, yeah. But I mean I don't know what sort of specific things it will go into. But we're going to check this out. Hopefully, you're going to enjoy. If you want more reactions like this, let me know in the comments. And links are also in the description to my Patreon. If you want to see some more of my reactions to movies and other things that I can't post to YouTube, links are there. Or you want to suggest some things for me to react to that I can't post to YouTube, links are also there. And also links are in the description to Lost in the Pond. I'm sure by now you all are subscribed to him, but if you haven't for some reason, links will be in the description to his channel too. And yeah, let's just check this out.
Hello, this video is sponsored by BritBox, the premier streaming service for Britain's most beloved TV shows. I'm Lawrence Brown and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to two things: size and history. Now, if you're a long-time subscriber of this channel, you may remember a few months ago that I did a video proclaiming the United States to be a small country.
America can't be that massive.
But there is one equally small problem with this assertion. It completely and utterly a little bit contradicts my pinned tweet, which reads, "The biggest difference between Britain and America is that Americans think 100 years is a long time and the British think 100 miles is a long way."
I mean, from where I live now to London is probably about 100 miles. I would say that's a relatively long distance. I don't think it's even 100 miles. It's not, to be honest. I think it's probably 60 to 80 miles. And I think it might not even be that. I don't even know. But I feel like that's a relatively long distance, which I guess in the US is just probably a normal commute, to be honest, for a lot of people. But I've seen this quote before, but it definitely does, I do see some truth in it, because it just sort of, in terms of the cultures, you can sort of relate to it.
Hey, it's a profound quote, but the big question that I want to answer today is this: is it even true? Well, before I shock you into the next century, if you are new to this channel and love hearing comparisons between my two countries and you haven't had a chance to subscribe, do that now. In the meantime, let's break up that pithy quote into two halves. In the first half, I'm going to take a look at the assertion that us Americans think 100 years is a long time. The implication being, of course, that we the British don't. So why is that? Well, President Lawrence can't...
I find it so fascinating how he now refers to himself as both. It's quite cool, to be fair. You can. I mean, he's got both citizenship, so he's got the ability to do it, but you know he's definitely making the most of becoming a US citizen. You gotta respect it, man.
Answer that. Instead, I'm going to hand you over to Lawrence from 2 seconds from now. Thanks, past Lawrence. As you've probably figured out by now, I did not always reside in the United States. For the first 20 years of my life, I grew up in a town on the east coast of England called Grimsby. And Grimsby is just your...
It's so funny, right? Because you can just tell it's an English town just based off the pavements and stuff. Like every crossing, you have this little area where you'll step on and just stuff like this. It's just a British town, man.
And Grimsby is just your standard English town, which also happens to produce YouTube sensations. But like most standard English towns, it contains one or two visual reminders of how old all of this is. Take, for example, the Grimsby Minster, a building that is located next to our shopping centre, what do we call it? Precinct. It dates back to the 12th century. And there's a reason that I'm going high-pitched there outside of the usual ones. And that's because now that I've lived in the United States for almost 15 years, I myself look back at the age of some of Britain's buildings and nearly burst with excitement. Because in your average American town or city, you're not likely to find buildings that go back more than 300 to 400 years.
What is the oldest building in the US? Will it have been something that was made from the Native Americans years and years before? Or would that be like long gone and stuff? There's the town, right, where the homes. There's like the town. I think that's in America, right? The town of the homes is it built into the? I don't know where it is. It's kind of not deserty, but it's mud or desert or something like that. I guess that would be up there as one of the oldest, but maybe he's about to mention it now. If not, I'm probably going to search it up.
This is probably why Americans I've interacted with have always been so awestruck when I tell them things like, "Ooh, you know when I visited York?"
Yeah, you've got to realise in the UK, this is just there's buildings that have. I mean, people will know this, right? But I just want to see oldest building in America. Oh, oldest building to exist. Teos Pueblo. That's not what I was thinking of, but according to the I gotta say, according to the we'll start again. According to the individuals who currently live, people live here. The majority of the extant, I don't even know what that means. Extant structures were constructed between around 1,000 and 1,450 CE. God damn. A lot older than I would have thought then. Oldest building in... I want to see the oldest building in my city. I'd think the castle or the cathedral. This one as well, that's in the city centre. You've also got the wall around the city, to be fair. Elm Hill. There's films that have been filmed in this street. It's just like a really Victorian looking street. Let me get a little picture of it. I don't know if anyone cares, but for those who may do. Elm Hill, Norwich. It's quite a famous little street here. You can imagine, like, at night time, it probably seems a bit creepy. But, yeah, it's just like this here. Cars, I don't think cars really go down here. It's more just people walking down. But cars probably do go down occasionally, right? But it's not like a common thing. It leads up to like a castle. And there's a few like cute little shops. To be fair, this is a cool little picture. I've not seen it look this nice. But, yeah, I know there's been a few films filmed in that area. But... yeah, I've just got into a little rabbit hole there, but we're going to get back into what he's saying. So he's speaking about buildings in York, and then I guess he's going to go on about just buildings in England or the UK in general.
When I tell them things like, ooh, you know when I visited York? And I went to the top of that tower on a hill in the middle of the road called Clifford's Tower, and I nearly got knocked off by the wind. That bastard was built in 1245, and that was only after an older version of it was destroyed by angry humans. And these are just some of the older British dwellings that I've personally visited. You go up to Scotland, to Orkney, where it's really cold, and there is a Neolithic farmstead called Knap of Howler, I hope I'm saying that right, that is, and I'm not making this up, 5,000 years old.
Oh my days.
But on this side of the pond, there is a massive counterpoint to all of this. Old Native American
So is he going to go into literally what I was about to search? God damn it.
buildings. Did you know that in New Mexico, there is a historic, what is essentially apartment
This is what I was thinking of.
complex called Taos Pueblo?
Oh, it is this one then. It wasn't showing that in the picture. This is what I was thinking of.
And this is one of the oldest continuously inhabited communities in the United States. It was built possibly as long ago as 1,000 years, making it perhaps older than Clifford's Tower. And I know what you're thinking. Ooh, Lawrence, Native American history predates US history. Isn't that cheating? Maybe, but technically Britain itself was only formed in the early 18th century, so you could argue that Clifford's Tower predates British history. That said, in most towns and cities in the United States, you won't easily find structures as old as this. Which is why Americans were probably surprised when I told them that the signing of the Magna Carta, which is a royal charter of rights, signed in 1215, may have been witnessed by someone who is still alive today. And when I say somebody, I mean a tree. This yew tree in Runnymede, England is said
This tree's in England? That is the ugliest tree I've ever seen.
to have been present at the sealing of the Magna Carta and might be as old as 2,500 years. Which brings me on to my next counterpoint. The world's oldest tree is not in England or Scotland or Wales or
LA?
Northern Ireland. It's in
California,
Eastern California.
Yep.
You see, us humans have a tendency to forget that life exists outside of our own species, and that this Great Basin bristlecone pine is older than the pyramids. Not to mention that America is also a place where they find a lot of the dinosaurs. And I'm not just talking about the Senate chamber. Okay, fine, but to keep it in terms that we understand, let's talk once again about humans. You see, in addition to old buildings and trees, Britain has entire historic towns. And they don't come much more historic than the mighty Colchester.
Colchester? I'm telling you right now, Colchester is not a nice... It's not a city. I think it's just turned into a city. It's not a nice city. I mean, it's got a zoo, which is pretty cool. But it's... Maybe in terms of history, it's cool, but... Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised, but I was not expecting Colchester.
Colchester, originally known as Camalodunum is said to be the oldest recorded town in Britain.
Wow.
How old is it? Well, by the order of a few decades, it's older than Jesus Christ. The old buildings and walls that you see in the town today were added by the Romans, who invaded over the next couple of 100 years. And again, to me, that is mind-blowing, because for the last 15 years, I've lived in a country where, famously, the first attempt at an English settlement occurred as recently as the late 16th century. Which, if you ran a clock of the Earth's history, was a mere few seconds ago. But I hope you're ready for another counterpoint, because here comes one. Here in the US, I've personally visited a complex and once highly populated historic settlement that was built not long after Colchester. Cahokia Mounds, right here in Illinois, was first devised in the year 600, with its famous green mounds constructed by its native inhabitants 200 years later. And at the height of the town's popularity, it had more people living in it than London. That's London then, not London now. That would be mental.
Wow.
Of course, London now makes for a great place to film a TV series, as seen in the likes
He's getting his money, getting his ad in. I'm going to let it run because this video has just been posted, so this ad is as active as anything.
of Luther, EastEnders, and Silent Witness. And how do I know
Banger
that?
shows.
Well, because all of them are available to watch on BritBox. In fact, Silent Witness just launched its 26th season. A popular, gritty detective series that actually premiered more than a decade before I moved to the United States. Silent Witness
It's actually a very good series, by the way. I like that series a lot.
was basically CSI before CSI was even a thing, but with the added bonus of British accents. And of course, all of this is great news for people who like to binge watch Lost in the Pond, because firstly, after devouring all of my award-nominated comedy, I'm sure you could do with some dramatic relief. But secondly, there's a special offer in it for you that I'm going to tell you about in approximately 11 seconds exactly. In addition to this, you can stream your other favourite British shows via your smartphone, tablet, desktop, Chromecast, Apple TV or Roku device, as well as LG.
What is Roku? I always see. I kept thinking he said Rakuten, but that's like a channel. What is a Roku
And
device?
Samsung Smart TVs. Head to BritBox.com/LostInThePond and use the promo code LostInThePond when signing up for a monthly subscription, and you'll get 50% off your first month. The link is also in my description below. And so
Links are in the description to his video, where you can then find the links to this.
we reach the second half of the quote. The British think 100 miles is a long way. The implication there being that Americans think nothing of such a distance. And largely, this is true. I have family members who live about 200 miles from me, and we drive down to them every time there's a holiday. Just because the
Fair
trains are
enough.
crap. But also because that's just a normal holiday commute for some Americans, who may even choose to go further than that and have little to no qualms. But then it got me thinking, there are some Americans who like to run. I'm looking at you, Forrest. Yeah, run. Not just to their mama's house, but from one coast of the United States to the other. And we're not just talking in the movies. There are actual humans who wake up one morning and go, I've got a plan. I'm going to run across the United States.
Wait, that would take months. No, there's a guy who's maybe not months, but yeah, probably a few months. But there's a guy that's running across Africa from the bottom to the top, and he's like 2-3 months in, and he's ran like 1/4, maybe a quarter, less than probably about a quarter of it so far, which is crazy to think. But I mean, god damn. People, I mean, I didn't know he was going to go into these details of people running. I think people like to run anywhere, but to run from one coast, one side of the US to the other side of the US is pretty mental.
It's like a maniac. And if you want an idea of just how wide this country is, the fastest person to ever do it is a man called Pete Kostelnik, and even for him it took
42 days, there we go.
42 days to run from San Francisco to New York City. And as somebody myself who hasn't run since 1998, that sounds like an eternity. But it got me thinking about the most well-known long-distance run you can do in Britain. This is from John O'Groats in northern Scotland down to Land's End.
People do this? I didn't even know people do this. I know it's like a thing that people like travel from one to the other, but not run.
And the extreme end of Cornwall. And the quickest that anybody's ever run that distance is just over 9 days. And it got me thinking, either
That's pretty wild though. Because even to drive that would take a good day. I mean, yeah, that's wild. Maybe even more than a day, to be fair.
Britain has really slow runners, or counterpoint. The distance from north to south is much longer than I imagined, but more on that in a moment. Because first we have to acknowledge that in this very country, most people, like me, don't run. In fact, this is America, land of the automobile. Most people drive. So in the interest of distance, what is the longest that somebody can drive in this country while always remaining on the same interstate? The answer? Interstate 90, which runs from the east coast to the west at a distance of just over 3,000 miles. For comparison, that is longer than taking a flight from Manchester Airport in England to Bangor Airport in the state of Maine. And do you know how I know that? Because that was my first ever flight. And when you're flying over nothing but a giant pond for 8 hours, it can feel like an eternity. So have fun on I-90. Oh, and if you're looking for a counterpoint on this particular one, you'll equally be waiting until the end of time, because I don't have one. Because the longest motorway in Britain is the M6, which clocks in at a paltry 231 miles. But it's
Not even a comparison.
worth pointing out that Interstate 90 doesn't even represent the longest distance between two cities in the continental United States. To do that, you'd have to travel from Point Arena,
West Quaddy Head. What a name.
California, all the way to West Quaddy Head. That's a real place in the state of Maine. In total, that distance is 3,527 miles, which brings us back to...
Oh, he said it across the US. I was thinking to myself, wait, surely you could do like Hawaii to the East Coast, but he said on the what's it even said? Just on the land, basically, where the 48 states are.
John O'Groats to Land's End, which, while nowhere as long as its American counterpart, is still 837 miles, which is about a quarter the American distance that I just mentioned. Remember, the United States is approximately 40 times the size of the United Kingdom. And so counterpoint, while Britain might be lacking in the girth department, it makes up for it with pretty decent length. Get your minds out of the gutter. And so, in conclusion, I would have to say that my pinned tweet is sort of correct. Americans do occasionally think that 100 years is a long time, until they think about it for a moment. This whole country is filled with ancient history, whether we're talking about human or natural. And the UK, while its people, my people, might be mad at me for consistently pointing out that it is in fact smaller than 11 different United States, it is also bigger than some of them, and longer than most of them. Probably. I haven't done the maths. So it simply remains for me to return to my Twitter account at Lost in the...
This was a cool video. This is one of my favourite ones, you know, because he went into just different details that you've never really seen. And I mean, I do think it's kind of true, that quote. I mean, definitely in terms of like how he put it, in terms of like how you just travel 200 miles casually in the US. I don't think that's the same here. I mean, people will definitely do it, but nowhere near to the same level. As if it's like a small distance. It'll probably be like a once in a year thing for Christmas and stuff like that, because 200 miles is a good like bit of distance. Obviously train links make it a lot shorter, which does help a lot, because you will get train links from main cities to smaller cities, to be fair. But yeah, this is a interesting look into this, and hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts, and until next time, peace.